There is no question that the over-medicalization of dying in many countries is extreme and harmful. And this is where the death doula comes into the frame, and it's a term that you may or may not have heard of. So what exactly is a death doula? What are the pros and cons of hiring one and taking it up as a profession? Please like and subscribe if you learned something new. Now let's talk death doulas. What is a death doula? To quote the Australian Doulas College, an end-of-life doula is a non-medical role that provides support, options and education, assisting the dying and those around them to have the end of life unfold in alignment with their wishes, to preserve the quality of life, well-being and self-worth up to and beyond the end of life as we know it. They are the informed companion, bringing comfort, support, compassion and assist a person and their family in feeling safe and supported during this important transition. As stated, they are not medical or mental health professionals. They fill the void that would naturally be filled by a particular wise and trusted community member in other less death-avoidant cultures. So let's get some practical examples of what a death doula could do if you were to hire one. Provide the opportunity to talk openly and honestly about the dying process. Alleviate the anxiety, guilt and shame often associated with death and dying. Develop a plan for how a person's environment should look, feel, sound and smell for them. Coordinate with family and friends to evaluate visitation, and we'll come back to this. Overseeing 24/7 care alongside healthcare providers like hospice and palliative care. We'll also come back to this later. Providing education about things like do not resuscitate orders and healthcare power of attorneys. Creating guided meditations and rituals specific to that person's religious faith or spirituality. Sitting with the person in their final moments. Assisting with the writing of obituaries and planning the funeral. Providing companionship after someone has died. Finding creative ways to honour the person after they've died, which can include the person who is dying as part of the process and exploring that person's life and legacy. So, as a doula, you must be empathetic, obviously, have a great knowledge around death and dying from a legal, medical, religious, cultural and psychological perspective to the point that you can break it down to a very basic level. You need to be flexible with your belief and your time. People don't die at convenient times and they often follow religions that you don't, for example. You also need to be patient and often thick-skinned, because you're going to be dealing with a variety of people in a variety of emotional states, and that isn't always sunshine and rainbows. This is also the time where family secrets and conflicts usually come out. Some people are amazing at handling this and some people just can't. Now, if you were thinking of becoming a death doula but you haven't actually been around dying people before, I would strongly suggest you become a volunteer at a hospice for a year or so. They all have programs and they'll train you up. This will give you the experience of being around dying patients. You will also come to understand their practical needs. You will experience all the other things that come with being in that environment. And you can network your butt off so staff are more likely to recommend you once you start your journey as a death doula. Now, we did talk a little about this in our death-related careers video, but let's answer the question of how you become a death doula, and all links will be in the description. Now, first thing you need to know is that the field is unlicensed, unregulated, and there is no membership organisation that provides guidance on standards required. So all the things I'm about to mention are strongly advised but not mandatory here in Australia. So the Australian Doula College is probably the best place to go. And it has a 9-month online course consisting of 7 different modules for $2,300. There is also the possibility of scholarships if you go check out their website. Now, before you sign up, I would strongly advise you read their code of ethics. They are written very clearly and there are damn good reasons for them. And if you don't agree with them, do not sign up. If you are on the other side of all of this and you're wishing to hire a death doula, they are mostly freelance and the best place to find them is the directory on the Australian Doula College's website, but also the end-of-life doula directory online. The link will be in the description. Most death doulas are hired by people who wish to die at home, but you absolutely can hire them if you wish to die in a hospice, for example. What to look for when you hire a death doula? Now, I get a lot of this sounds quite vague and a bit airy-fairy, but that's because there are so many variants in the possible clients and what they need. Who you are, your personality, your attitudes and beliefs play a big part in if you decide to hire a death doula, and if so, which one will you hire? You have to get the right person. If you don't click, move on. And with that, I'm going to give you some red flags to look for when you hire someone for this position. Now, in the past, I've met and worked with a number of death doulas. They're also called end-of-life doulas, by the way. And most are fantastic people that you wish you could clone just so you could have more of them. They are empathetic, competent, they understand the assignment, so to speak. But I've also met more than my fair share of death doulas that are not competent and seem to have an agenda. Let me explain. Their job is to be an advocate, to be an educated friend or companion. It is their job to ensure that the patient has a good death as the patient wants. And if you don't know what a good death is, go see our video on that. They are not medical staff or mental health professionals. Their job is to advocate. So when a client who is well informed asks for a nurse to come give them pain meds, that is their right. When a family wants to have a grief counsellor come in, that is their right. And that is what they should be advocating for, and most do. But when they disregard the client's wish or give the nurse a hard time for doing their job, they are disrespecting the client and the nurse. Their job is also to educate, but some seem to want to prove just how much they know about death or the concepts and theories and available options, and they believe they need to show this to the client by telling them absolutely everything, and usually all at once. You are not a lecturer, and your client doesn't want to be lectured. They also only have a limited time left and they don't want to spend that time being indoctrinated into your cause. Most go into it for the right reason, to help and support. They know their limitations. But others seem to go into it for the wrong reason, to be the expert. They seem to have an agenda, and that seems to be to ensure that someone dies as they see as being the best way, not what the client wants. And often their best way is the extreme end of the scale. Some almost to the point where they seem to believe that any medical intervention is evil, including pain meds. History is often glorified and romanticized, and today's current norms are demonized. And these particular death doulas have this idea that people should die the way they did back in the 1800s. Now, of course, being surrounded by loved ones and achieving a good death is probably something we can all aspire to today. But that shouldn't come at the expense of all the positives that we also have today. Painkillers and antibiotics, for example. Sure, people often died surrounded by loved ones back in the day, but they were also often in extreme pain and in high levels of distress due to their illness, disease and injury. Herbs and praying are just not going to cut it in that circumstance. Point is, a death doula needs to be aware of the pros and cons of both sides of the coin and be prepared to use both to help their client. Again, most do, but some do not. And it is these that are detrimental to their client, the profession, and who very obviously do not agree with the Australian Doula College's Code of Conduct. Now, I don't say all of this to scare you off the idea of hiring a death doula. Far from it. There are many awesome ones out there, and they should be used more. But every field has its negative outliers. And luckily, in this field, they are very easy to spot. So when you're hiring one, ask questions. Use your gut feeling. Are they listening to you? Bring a family member along and see how they act around the family member. Make it very clear what you want and see how they react. And if you do get a bad vibe, don't be afraid to say no thanks and look elsewhere. Now is not the time to tell yourself to just suck it up. This is the time to be assertive and a little selfish and get the person that you want. And also, if you've hired one who presented well in the interview, but they're now starting to stress you out or you're starting to feel uncomfortable around them, get rid of them. That is your right. Death and end-of-life doulas are a role that should be used more within society, especially with our aging population. And while I do wish there was at least some regulation around the role, this updated version is rather new to the death industry. But many cultures have had this role in their community for thousands of years, and there are very good reasons why. And with that, go talk death.